Hello and welcome to the Pregnancy Playbook podcast. I'm Amy Strongman, your host, and I'm extremely passionate about this stage of womanhood. So whether you're just thinking about starting a family or in the early realms of motherhood, this is a space for you. We'll be talking all things preconception, pregnancy, birth, and beyond. Each episode, I'll be sitting down with some amazing guests, sharing insights, experiences, expertise, and much, much more. So whether we are debusting some myths or learning something new, this space is for you. We really want this stage of womanhood to feel like a little less overwhelming and a lot more magical. This is maternal alchemy, and this transformational stage of womanhood, it's at its best. So let's put the kettle on, grab a cuppa, and let's join us, and let's get started. Hello and welcome back to the Pregnancy Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Amy Strongman, and this is where we talk all about things preconception, pregnancy, birth and beyond. And today I am delighted to be joined by the mothership of hypnobirthing, according to Giovanna Fletcher, the lovely Katharine Graves, who has really been at the heart of birth preparation for probably 20 plus years, I think, Katharine. So welcome and let's get started. So as I said, the mothership of hypnobirthing. I mean, how does that sit with you?
I think it's hilarious.
But you really have been doing this so long, in the sense that this is a revolution that you began.
Well, when I started, nobody knew the word. Whereas now I think every pregnant woman knows the word. She may well decide not to do it, which is rather silly of her. But she's heard it.
Yes.
And people sometimes say to me when I train new teachers, well, it's easier for you. When you started, there weren't any other teachers, so you had a huge market, which is true, but nobody knew about it.
Yes.
So nobody had heard it. I remember we had a small group of us who were teaching. We had a stand at the London Baby Show, and it said Hypnobirthing over it. And people would go past, read it, and give it a very wide berth in case we did something odd to them. But 2 or 3 years later, they were seeing it and said, oh, yes, I think my sister told me about it. Can you tell me some more?
It's the idea of the hypno bit, isn't it? It's like
it's
we
dreadful.
all think
it's
about
not a good name.
Hypnosis and being sort of taken over from our minds. But
Yes.
really, it's, I mean, I've done it with both my children for their birth preparation, and I had 2 home births.
Wonderful.
And it really was such a powerful tool, not
It's
only in
amazing.
pregnancy, but actually coming into motherhood as well, and being able to breathe and calm myself and all those things.
Absolutely.
Such a wonderful
Yes.
toolkit. So I guess we'll start by, well, maybe you want to share a little bit about your own birth stories, because I know you have lots of children, or do you want to?
Well, I was always going to say, people say to me sometimes, you're very much in favour of home birth, aren't you? And I'm not. I'm in favour of the best possible birth.
Yes.
And home is the best place to get it. I had 4 children in hospital because, like everybody else, I just thought that's what you do. If I was having them now, I would undoubtedly have them at home. Mm-hmm. But I absolutely respect people who say they're going to a hospital because that's the idea they've been grown up with.
Isn't it?
And even more, their partners want to get them there. I think it's partly because they don't want to feel responsible like they might be at home. But it's more the number of women who've come up to me and said, I'd love to have my baby at home, but he doesn't want me to. And I popped that on Instagram once, because I'd heard it several times. And do you know the response I got on Instagram to that? Over 750,000 views.
Wow.
So the number of women who would like to have their baby at home and don't because he doesn't want them to is enormous. And all he's doing, he wants to protect her.
I was going to say, that is protection, isn't it?
But
that
he
fear.
is ill-informed and he's actually causing her harm.
It's the information, it's the education about birth and the possibility of it. And so how did you get into hypnobirthing then? Did you use it?
By chance.
Oh,
Like most good things in life.
yes, just serendipity coming through.
Well, I mean, I do a variety of therapies, and one led on to the next. And it's rather a long story, so I won't bother to bore you with it. But the one immediately prior to doing hypnobirthing was I was a hypnotherapist. And you have to do a bit of extra training every year. And after I'd done the obvious things like stress release and stopping smoking or whatever, I didn't know what to do. And somebody said they'd been to this course and I might enjoy it. And I went. I was absolutely blown away by it. I thought it was amazing. And I offered it as part of my hypnotherapy practice. But it's taken over my life because
wonderful.
I am such a lucky person.
It's
it is
such a
wonderful
gift,
thing
isn't it,
do.
to be in this realm? I think we talked about it just before filming, but it is such a wonderful opportunity to really impact women's experiences positively, especially in the birth space when we're hearing so much negativity and stressful situations and a lot of fear. It's so lovely to have this sort of beacon that you have provided, which is like, and it does work. I mean, it really does work.
That's what one dad said when asked to comment on hypnobirthing. He said, the thing about KGHypnobirthing is, but it works. Which I think is
it's very standard.
That's it. Yes, it works.
Tick. And how would you describe hypnobirthing? I mean, this is a big question because everyone's going to have their own take, but at its essence, how would you describe what hypnobirthing is?
It is helping somebody let go of everything that has got in the way of having a wonderful birth. I can't teach a woman anything. Every woman is perfectly created to give birth efficiently and comfortably, which I'm sure people are jumping up and down and swearing at the screen when I say that.
Yes.
But it's true. But the whole of our society, the whole of our maternity services, everything that she has been brought up with gets in the way. So, I mean, it's a bit of a con, actually, asking somebody to come to a KG hypnobirthing class, because there is nothing I can teach them. But what I can do is help them get rid of the fears, which are enormous, the preconception, misinformation.
Preconditioning of what we've taught about birth.
All the stuff. You know, you go outside and you ask anybody about birth. I mean, I saw one on the screen yesterday. I was screaming at the screen because it was somebody just going, pause, how many thousands of women have you frightened by showing that picture of birth? But if you ask anybody, they'll say, well, you go to hospital, you lie on your back, and you scream, and it's absolutely agonising. Well, KG hypnobirthing births aren't.
No. I remember actually being on the phone, and when I did my KG hypnobirthing, they said, well, if you do call labour line, they might not believe that you're having a baby.
Exactly.
And it happened.
They didn't.
They didn't believe me. I had a baby 2 hours after that. I knew I was in labour. As a woman, I'm having a baby. You can feel it. You know it. It's in tune. It's in tune. So it was, I definitely agree with that quote.
How old are your children?
They are 8 and 6.
It's possibly a little better now, because I think every midwife knows about hypnobirthing. We have trained a great many midwives to be hypnobirthing teachers. So it's slightly more likely you will be speaking to somebody who knows what you're talking about. But it's really important for mums to tell their caregivers what they're doing.
Yeah.
Because it is so different. Every midwife who sees her first KG hypnobirthing birth is absolutely blown away by how different it is.
It's calm. It's calm, and there's trust in the body, I think, which is really powerful to witness.
It's so different, isn't it?
It's great. And what do you think the biggest misconception is then about hypnobirthing in itself?
Well, people don't like the hypno word.
Me included.
What are you going to do to us? Speaking as a hypnotherapist, you see, you get hypnotised every day of your life, every time you speak to somebody. But when somebody comes to a hypnotherapist because they've got a problem, they weren't born with that problem. If they're frightened of spiders, it's because mum, when a spider has walked across the floor, has always gone, and they learn. Or if they're afraid of heights, every time they've climbed onto a kitchen stool or a ladder, which all children want to do, somebody says, get down, you might hurt yourself. And sometimes it gets such a negative in their lives that they need to do something about. So they come to a hypnotherapist to unhypnotise them. I'm an unhypnotherapist.
That's such a lovely way of looking at it.
And I use positive words to help them let go of a negative they've all acquired in their lives. And we have all acquired a negative perception of how birth is. Because for most women it is. I mean, it's true.
Yes.
But it doesn't have to be.
That's wonderful, because it is the stories that we tell. Our friends have had such and such, or they've experienced this, and these are the stories that we're passing on. And what I found just sort of in my line of work recently is that we're frightened to tell the positive stories for fear of upsetting those who've not had such a positive experience. And then the only thing that's perpetuating, exactly.
Yes.
No, I worked really hard for that, Katharine, that hypnobirth. You really have to train yourself. But that's the thing. We are sort of perpetuating the fearful stories and the stories that don't take the course that we we want.
Well, if birth's going to be like that, I'd better be in hospital in case it's like that for me, and then they can do something about it. Quite forgetting that actually it was the problem arose because they were in hospital.
Yes.
Sometimes, not always, but sometimes.
And having I think having the choice of being able to notice where you feel safest. And for some people, their story may lead them to the hospital because that's something that's happened previously in their lives. But for most women, I would say and argue, it would be wonderful, wouldn't it, to have a default home birth.
That's the default option.
with the hypnobirthing. Everyone should have hypnobirthing. And then, if things arise or things take a turn or a little plot twist, we can take it elsewhere.
I popped something up on Instagram yesterday which just said, do nothing. That's the default option, unless something is proven to be useful. And sometimes it is, but not very often.
And what do you love most about seeing sort of the tools? Because you must have seen hundreds of couples now through your time.
So
and the
Aren't I lucky?
You are. These tools that have really served them not only maybe in the birth space, but in early parenthood. What joy do you get from that?
Well, I could still turn cartwheels of delight when I get a wonderful birth story. I mean, that's a real reward. I mean, yes, it's how I earn my living. People sometimes go on Instagram and say, you only sell your courses to make money, which is true. But it's not. I don't only sell my courses to make money. It's how I earn my living.
Yeah.
But of course, people have the option of not taking it. So I'm not forcing it on people. No. But quite frequently, somebody who says that will work in the NHS. They get their salary check at the end of the month. And I'm put in prison if I don't pay my taxes to pay for it.
Yeah.
So it's not the only reason.
No, but it must be so rewarding hearing how those stories have unfolded and to kind
wonderful.
of just the journey they've taken and maybe where they started. I mean, it's a huge transformational process, as we know anyway, but to really know that your kind of toolkit has been used is very special.
The important thing is to get good information, which we give, and you have to be very strong and make the right choices and stick to it and ask the right questions. And we're always there to help.
Yes.
But women in general don't get good information. And it's anything you do. It's the planning and the practice. Anything in life, it's important. You plan.
Yes.
An athlete who's going to run in the Olympics, they have spent months or years pounding the track in the early hours or the road. And they have a trainer, they have a physio, probably a sports psychologist, a whole team around them. They experiment with different running shoes, different race styles, different race strategies, and they really plan and they really practice. But when they go into the stadium, they're on their own because of the planning and the practice.
Yes.
And then they win their gold medal. And from our mums, the gold medal is their wonderful birth and their wonderful baby. But people don't plan. They say, I've got a birth plan. It's actually a wish list. They haven't actually planned. Anything in life that's important, you plan, except birth, which is the most important thing.
It's so interesting, though, isn't it? Because we're sort of taught not to talk about it when we first get pregnant. For those first initial 3 months, it's sort of, let's keep everything secret. It's a very tender time. I don't want to let work know. So you're on your own at that point, and then you have like 6 months to swat up on everything there is to know about.
It's very easy, actually.
But I think if you just start to tap into that and understand that this is a natural process, that there are, courses and books and wonderful research available to actually just take ownership. And it's sort of sad that we have to have that responsibility, isn't it, for us as women? But we do, and it's important to know that this is our only experience of birth. It's going to live with us for an entire lifetime. It will impact how we parent, how we mother, the rest of our life. And you never forget, do you, your first experience of birth, I'm sure, and subsequent births thereafter.
Well, the whole of your baby's life. It's that important.
And so what do you think would help women feel more in control? Or how do you think hypnobirthing helps within that sort of realm? Because I think you were once quoted saying, birth doesn't have to be painful, but it is always powerful.
Oh, you bet.
And I think that too.
These are some of the most powerful muscles in the human body, working to absolute capacity. But all our other muscles doing the job they're designed to do are not painful. So it does seem very odd But the muscles which are responsible for the continuation of the human race are the only muscles that are painful, or generally considered to be painful. So it is always powerful. I remember a mum, I was teaching a class of couples, and she'd had a wonderful birth, and she brought her lovely little 3-month-old baby to tell them about it. And when she walked into the room, everybody said, "Was it painful?" And she said, "I can put my hand on my heart and say it wasn't painful." But I was amazed how powerful it was. And I thought, I must remember to tell couples this, because if they expect to do the course, hop into a birth pool and out pops a baby, it's not like that. It is a very powerful experience. But powerful and painful are two different things.
Well, I'd love to touch on the power of words with you, seeing as that is a really, really important differentiation, because it is an intense sensation.
You bet.
And it's so, you cannot believe that it's your body. But then when you start to learn that it's, like you say, the uterus has been designed to birth the baby, and it has a purpose. This movement of the muscles are coming up and rising up to the fundus. This is all, it's all the science and the knowledge that we have to then help birth the baby. It really, really is. But words, I think, play a huge role. And I know you wrote a bit in your book about the power of words. So if you wouldn't mind sharing just how you see them and how perhaps you use them in hypnotherapy and hypnobirthing in particular.
Well, it's amazing how often we use words negatively, actually. And when you say something in the negative format, it doesn't go in. For example, if I said to you, "Don't think of a pink kangaroo. It isn't hopping across the road. It hasn't got a baby in its pouch, and there isn't a car coming," what's in your mind?
I'm thinking about a pink kangaroo hopping across the road with a baby.
Exactly. So if a lovely, kind midwife, who's well-meaning, says to a woman in labour, "Don't worry," what's she putting into her mind? Worry, 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 worry. And then you tense up. And when you tense up, it changes your hormones. You produce the hormone adrenaline, which inhibits labour, inhibits the production of oxytocin, which is a hormone that facilitates labour. So it actually slows down, delays labour, and makes it more painful. And it was well-meaning in the first place.
And it's so small. I mean, you always say that encouragement, "Oh, don't worry, everything's going to be fine."
Yes.
But it's sort of off the cuff, isn't it? And it's not really noticing where she's at on her journey or where she might be. And she wasn't worried at all, but now she's thinking what's to worry about.
But we have well-trained dads who at that point would politely say to the midwife, "Do you realise you've introduced this idea into mine? Could we just not say it again, please?"
Quiet. I love that, though, that her kind of protecting the space, the dad's role or the birth partner's role to just create the boundary.
It's so important. That's their role, protection. At the moment, before they come to the class, they're misguided about their protection role. It's frequently get her into hospital, people know what they're doing, which is not necessarily anything wrong with that. But you see, as I rather rudely tell dads, men are useless at giving birth. But what they're very good at, and they do instinctively and naturally, is protect their woman. But in the case of a woman who's giving birth, having used the KGHypnobirthing course, he's protecting her from negative thoughts, negative influences, anything that gets in the way of her focus and her positive outlook during pregnancy, because she's developing this more and more and more, and particularly during birth. And they're brilliant at it.
Yes.
You give them something they want. What shall I do? What shall I do?
Purpose.
It's not so much what you do as your state of being.
Yes, how you're holding the space for the woman at that time and keeping her safe. It is powerful. I mean, think back to my husband doing that. He didn't know what he was doing. He's never been to a birth. Men don't see births the same way now
we see
or
them on
ever.
The movies, don't we?
It's true. And I mean, men weren't even allowed into the birth space, until quite recently. So I think there's a lot to be said for the male gaze sometimes as well around birth, and for some men who've experienced their wives in their most primal state that they've never seen or experienced before. It can be quite shocking, and it can be a challenge for them, especially if things haven't gone to plan. So I think that education in this space is really, really important. And why do you think fear impacts birth so much? Because I know obviously it will affect the hormones, and I'm sure those listening will be thinking, "Oh, but birth is meant to be feared. It's something I've never done before. I'm uncertain." But it has such a profound, role
Oh, you bet.
when you're in the birth space?
Well, the story I always tell is the fairy story of a princess and the pea, Hans Christian
Please
Andersen.
share that with us.
I'm sure everybody knows that the princess couldn't sleep because there was a pea under the mattress and it niggled. So what did they do? They gave her more mattresses. And my children had a book where the princess had to climb up a ladder to get to bed. There were so many mattresses. But she still couldn't sleep because she was so refined that the pea was still there and it still niggled. Only when they removed the pea could she comfortably sleep on one mattress. And the mattresses are like the breathing and the relaxations and the positive statements, and they're all good. But without removing the fear, they're not as good. They've been around for 70 years or more. If that was all that was needed, what we do would never have evolved.
Yes.
But removing that fear, and it doesn't mean you totally forget everything you've ever heard that's negative about birth, but it most certainly takes the sting out of it, so it doesn't have the same effect. So that's massively important, the work to release fear.
And there's lots of, I think, sort of unexpected fears. I remember mine was very much financial, because I had a big credit card debt at the time when I first found out I was pregnant, and it was just eating away because I hadn't shared that with my husband. And I remember when I wrote my form about my fear releasing, I'm thinking, why can't I? Oh my gosh, it's, and the beauty of that was sharing that out loud. And he just said, we'll sort it before the baby comes. And it was honestly, it was like me, I just melted into the mattress. If that was my pee, I was like, oh my gosh, but it's amazing that was the small piece that was really holding me back from
It's the sort of thing
trusting.
that could wake you at 2 a.m, isn't it?
Yes.
Because it's deep there in your subconscious.
Yeah. And it could be many things for different other people, career or things, all those sorts of things. So I think being able to share that and, like you say, to remove it gives you that kind of freedom to really embrace birth with your whole being, as opposed to sort of nearly all of it.
People will sometimes say, well, it must raise your pain threshold. No, that's not it. And then sometimes they say, well, it must be mind over matter then. No, that's not it. It's mind with matter, working in the way they're designed to work, which is efficiently and far more comfortably. We can't promise a pain-free birth, because if we could, there would be thousands and millions of people beating a path to my door. But some people have a pain-free birth, and everybody has a far more comfortable birth. I look at pain like it's a continuum. And there's on one end, there's people screaming and writhing around in agony like you see on the movies. The other end, you have, and some of the women I teach have had a pain-free birth. And everybody is naturally somewhere along this line. And the course always, and that's a fairly brave thing to say, always moves them a good bit towards this end. Where it moves quite to this end, one of the most important things is the 10 minutes a day practice we ask people to do, because that's when gradually changes your subconscious mind and puts a different view of birth. But everybody who does the full course, people will sometimes say, I've done hypnobirthing, but it didn't work. To which I would always say, well, what did you actually do?
That's really interesting, because you could read a hypnobirthing book. You could
And
listen
it's good.
to, and you could listen
some
to a hypnobirthing audio. But I would argue that that's doing the activities, but are you really sort of embodying it? And are you taking it into your day-to-day? And are you bringing it into your sort of well-being as a whole?
For some people, it might be enough. But for most, and it will make a difference.
Yeah.
But, I mean, some people say, well, I bought this hypnobirthing audio to listen to while I was giving birth, but it didn't work. You thought, well, no. To me, if you have done KGHypnobirthing, you have done a full 12-hour course, either in person or you can get it online now, and it's exactly the same content. Obviously, there are advantages for being in person. You have read the hypnobirthing book, because that was written in the first place as the handbook for the course. It's the same content, but you can't remember everything you've been told in 12 hours. You've done your 10 to 15 minutes a day practice. And you can't prove that it's working, because anything else in life, like an exam or something that's important, you can do a mock, you can check up, but you can't with KGHypnobirthing.
No rehearsal with having a baby.
The whole process is less and less, getting rid of the stuff that gets in the way. There's nothing to add. It's just getting rid of stuff.
Decluttering.
And what a wonderful word. Yes, decluttering your mind.
Yes, really. I think this time of year as well, we're recording in September. I always think this is like a back to school, really taking hold. And I think birth is like that, preparing for birth. I mean, that's why I do what I do. I think there's so much to be said to talk about, ways to give birth, even just knowing that there's options available. Some women might not know they can have a, be part of a home birth team if your local area has one, or that you could change a hospital if you weren't, gelling with your midwife.
Indeed.
These opportunities.
Particularly dads. You mean you have a midwife? Yes. It's on the NHS? Yes. And in that respect, we are very fortunate in this country because some countries don't have it available in the state system. In fact, there is research which shows that the best births come from one-to-one care from a known midwife.
I know.
Now, the only way you get that in this country is to pay a lot of money for an independent midwife, which is wonderful, but plenty of people can't afford it.
Yes.
But there are two things I would say about that. One, that your husband or partner isn't medically qualified, but they are giving one-to-one loving care throughout your pregnancy and birth and beyond. And that is of inestimable value, just having the person you love. And the other is that when you have your baby at home, you have one midwife. You probably know your midwife. She may have cared for you during your pregnancy. Depends if she's on duty that night, but you will probably know that small team.
Yes.
So it won't be a stranger who walks into your house.
Which is so important.
It will be a known midwife just for you. She can't be called out of a room to be the second at another midwife or anything else. And she calls a second one for the birth. And it is pretty close to one-to-one care from a known midwife, which is known to be the best form of care.
It's amazing, but it makes so much sense.
Excuse me. Logical.
If you're having someone that you know and not a stranger, you can be relaxed and you don't mind them being in your space, and all of that I think is really important.
When we meet a stranger, however nice the stranger, and midwives are wonderful and they are very good at building rapport, but you're just a little bit on your best behaviour until you've got to know them.
A little edge.
Yes.
Checking them out. I'm just going back to the fear you said about just fears in general. I remember doing a lot of work through COVID, and the biggest fear for the women that came to me was they were so frightened to be on their own. So we had to come up with really creative ways to reframe, the affirmations to be like, my partner will be with me in the best way possible, they'd be wrapped up in his hoodie or something. But it just goes to show you that little bit of love and that continual time is just, it's important, much more than I think we sort of are aware of.
And in COVID, there were plenty of women who, sadly, some trusts withdrew the home birth option. It was interesting that some trusts focused on the home birth option because no woman wanted to go to the hospital.
That's true.
But it just depended on the will of a person at the top, as it still does. But women who were forced to go into hospital would walk up and down outside the unit with their partner until they got into established labour, and then he was allowed in. I'm sure you found that too.
It's just so, I just used to think it was so hard. I mean, that's why I started my business, was when I just realised that all the services for pregnant women were cut. And I said, this actually can't be. It's the most important time to find connection and be in your circle, in your village. So I started these online gatherings, which was, I never expected to start the business, but that's how it began. And it's sort of, just grown from there. But it is that importance of being seen in your pregnancy too, I think is such a big thing. And, a lot of it, like you say, with hypnobirthing is a lot in your mind, but it's also in these practices. And to be seen to be doing them also gives you that validation of, I'm actually taking this seriously and I really want this to be the best that it can be. And
it brings a couple closer together.
I agree, yes.
It is so lovely to watch.
And you do your beautiful, don't you, your lovely massage and your
that's
stroking.
fantastic.
Oh, please tell us about that, because I don't think there's lots of listeners or watchers know just the power of touch.
It's so simple and so gentle. You could go on the internet and find half a dozen ways of doing it, which are all more complicated. So I much prefer the simple way, and it works every bit as well. And what it is, you use the back of your hands because we touch more gently with the back of our hands than with the front. You can very gently, very slowly up the middle of the back. Across the shoulders.
I remember. It's so nice.
And down the side, you would not believe how good it is, would you?
It's so great.
But going up the middle is soothing the whole of the central nervous system, which is wonderful. that tiny little massage of the nerve endings under the skin stimulates the production of endorphins, which is nature's pain relief
And is
hormone.
that just on the shoulder?
Mostly. It's the best area
yes.
for it. And when you come down the side, one of the energy flows, one of the main meridians of acupuncture goes up the middle of the back, and 3 of the lesser ones come down the side. So in one very simple movement, he's giving her, soothing the central nervous system, stimulating the comfort hormones, and giving her a mini acupressure treatment.
All in one go.
And the thing is, it just feels so wonderful.
It does. It really. I do remember.
So good.
Interesting though, I will say, I found that really tricky to be touched in the very end bit to my labour. I just wanted everyone to just be quiet and go. But it was so powerful for me personally in pregnancy as well. The evenings just spent just that beautiful, and in the early stages, just to bring us together, to go slowly, to just pause.
It's better than a TENS machine.
Yes.
Much. But it's you can never tell what you're going to feel like in labour. People say in pregnancy, "Oh, I think I feel safer in hospital." But they don't. They mean they've been programmed to think they're safer in hospital. I had one mum, and she'd booked to go to the birth centre, but when it came to being in labour, she categorically refused to get into the car. Her instinct to stay in her safe place was so strong. The only way he could get her to the hospital, because they weren't geared up for a home birth, was to sit in the back seat with her and get a neighbour to drive.
Wow.
So when they had their second baby, they had a birth pool already in the kitchen, but she went one better. She refused to come downstairs. Her nest, her safe place was her bedroom.
Yeah.
And she wouldn't. And it's so instinctive. And you mentioned not wanting to be touched. I have a colleague who doesn't like being touched. She has 3 children. And the first 2 births, she didn't want to be touched. Third one, she was saying, "Stroke me, stroke me." So these practices that they do in pregnancy are all worth doing.
Exactly.
They can focus on the ones they like, because you don't know till you have the baby what you're going to feel like.
Exactly. And I love
so
to be
different.
touched in general in life. I love the feeling of skin on skin, and I just enjoy that. But honestly, in the labour, I learned so much actually about how, just delivery and how I felt. And when you're in your power, really, I guess is the only way I can describe it. When you're in your power and being able to use your voice and say what you like and what you don't like, and it gives you that sense of safety and security, because you're able to actually ask for what you want. And I think that strength comes from these practices that you share, because it really is hard sometimes to find your voice when you don't know.
Plenty of women have said, when it got more painful, it was when the midwife started to talk. And it was well meant. And women who haven't done the KGHypnobirthing course, the talk is probably quite helpful to distract their minds. But those who have got their focus, have programmed their mind, and silence is best.
Yes. My friend who I've interviewed on this podcast, she wore headphones for her whole labour.
Yes.
And she felt completely cocooned. And that was
you
the
can
way
listen to your audio.
Yeah. I think she just had it silent, to be honest. But I think she was just in the zone. But it's like keeping that environment. And I've got a question here about why environment is so important. Because I think we think about birth, that is that automatic thought that we're going into hospital. But you can still create a sense of home, even if you choose to go to have your baby into hospital.
And birth centres why are they called the Home from Home suite at St Thomas's? Because they made the rooms like home.
Yes, how
why do I
lovely.
do that? Because home is best.
We know it's good for all the hormones and everything. That's brilliant.
Absolutely.
And where do you think hypnobirthing is going, and interwoven with birth education? How do you see the future of birth education?
Well,
I guess is my question.
My aim is to make myself redundant, because what I teach is not needed, because it's just part of a maternity services.
Oh.
We've got an awful long way to go yet. I'm not likely to be redundant for a very long time.
Would it be to be going into your appointment and then they say, and here's your hypnobirthing course dates? I mean, it would change the landscape of birthing, I think.
Even the midwives we train, and some hospitals do teach it. The problem that the midwives have said, well, I'm not sure I can say that in hospital. Because
freedom.
We used to be accredited by the Royal College of Midwives, but we withdrew the accreditation, not because of anything wrong we do, mainly because of things right that we do. But we were saying things which were evidence-based but outside guidelines. And any midwife who says something outside guidelines is putting herself at risk of litigation, of being struck off, of losing her career, of bullying, ridicule. And that's why midwives are leaving the profession in droves. And that's why women get the birth we have. And it's fear, not for women's fear, but the fear that pervades the whole of the system. It's absolutely appalling.
Isn't it? It's tragic because the goal is the same. The goal has to be the same
That's
for everybody.
why people go into the profession, everyone, to do the best for women and babies. And the midwives leave because they can't practice midwifery.
In the way they want to.
Exactly.
That is what they came into. I know, I've heard it lots before, and it's so sad. It really is.
It is very sad, and that's what we're going to change.
But the dream would be to have hypnobirthing for every woman. Is that it?
Yes. It would be even better if it wasn't even needed, but it is needed to have it for every woman. But at the moment, my goal is to have strong, well-informed women who are prepared to say no. Fantastic. In the right circumstances. Of course, not always.
Brilliant.
But you have to be well-informed, you have to be strong.
Thank you. That is wonderful, wise words. And what has hypnobirthing taught you personally? I guess in life maybe, or the journey that you have taken sort of for being this advocate of finding your way in the birth space, because you've had a wonderful journey, I think.
Oh, I have.
Years.
But you don't see your own journey because it happens incrementally, do you? But I am told I'm outspoken, but I hope I'm always speaking with logic. I hope I'm always giving evidence. That's the aim. Everything in the course says, you say this because, which is more than can be said for the antenatal care that people get. And that is really my aim. I think that's really it. Something popped into my mind while I was talking, but it's gone now, so I'm not going to say it.
And do you think, just reflecting back on sort of maternity services and pregnancy throughout the years, if we'd have had, do you think, I guess the question is, do you think that women intuitively know sort of hypnobirthing tools, but they've been slowly kind of dwindled away? Or do you think it's something that would have made a huge difference in times gone by?
Well, I think it's an awful long time, but it's been dwindling away. I mean, people sometimes say to me, well, in the Bible, in the Garden of Eden, it says that Eve will have pain. But I understand, and I'm not that much of a scholar to have read it myself, but the word that's translated as pain for Eve is translated as hard work for Adam, and it's the same word. Somebody will pick me up on that and say you're wrong. So I cannot speak from personal experience, but that's the perception of birth.
Yeah.
And all these horror stories we hear are true. That's the awful thing. It doesn't have to be like that. And I know it doesn't have to be like that because I see it every day. Yeah,
that's it. It's an alternative thinking about birth, which would have been the norm, but we're not able to.
I hope so,
share
but
the
I don't know. But this where you go to give birth, people think it's safer in hospital, which you may need on occasions. But does anybody ever take their cat to the vet to give birth? I mean, it's laughable. Nothing would happen. It would scratch the vet and bite their owner, and you'd have to take them home again. But what do we do to women?
No. Well, we're going to end there because it is true. It's about realising this is a natural experience. The bodies have been designed to give birth, and we're trying to do everything that we can to really enhance that birth experience.
People say, yes, I believe it's a natural event, but actually they don't, because then the next breath they say, how will I know when to push?
Oh, please talk about the fetal reflex, please. Yes, I think that would be so interesting to hear.
Well, as far as how will I know when, every woman asks that. And it's a perfectly valid question. There are three answers. One, you will, which is not terribly helpful. Two, we get lavatorial at this stage. When you're doing a poo, there's a point you think you might, then you know you do, and then you couldn't stop it if you tried, which is another good answer. But I think the third answer is probably the best. How do you know when to yawn? How do you know when to sneeze? Just natural. Well, I do, because my body tells me. Well, birth's just the same. It opens people's eyes to what birth really is, a natural function. They say they think it is, but actually they don't believe it.
But I remember the exact point.
Yes.
I actually remember it because it was like, oh, oh, I'm actually not doing it. You sort of surrender yourself to nature because you have to come out of here in your mind, and your body it's a reflex, isn't it? That ejectile, fetus reflex. It is happening.
I believe that women in a coma have given birth.
Yes, yeah, subconscious. I definitely know that.
And also this idea that whether it's a natural or not a natural event. Mm-hmm. More than 50% of women are induced these days.
Shocking.
It's a pandemic which is worse than COVID, much worse than COVID. So what you're doing to all these babies, 50% of babies are born prematurely. And we try to avoid premature births. Now, it might just be a couple of days premature. It probably doesn't matter too much. It might be as much as 4 weeks premature. We don't know when that baby was planning to be born. And the last organs to fully develop are the lungs. So those are the babies which might not breathe properly at birth and have to go into intensive care to NICU, not one-to-one skin care with their mothers. And the other organ, which is one of the last to develop, is the brain. Now, people who've had an induction will say, well, my baby's absolutely fine. She's 5 now. She's running around. She's perfectly healthy. And I'm sure she is. But how we start our life impacts on the whole of our lives. There can be no doubt. It's difficult to research that because long-term research is difficult and there's so many other influences. But I know if I meet a mum who maybe I've taught some years ago, and it's always the same. She's such an easy child. He gets on with everybody. Nothing phases him. The more mature the baby, the better they are at birth. They sleep better at night. You'd think that would be an incentive for anybody to wait for them to be ready. They develop better. And I know one child, his mother would always say, well, all my friends want him to be invited to their children's parties because he has such a calming influence on the other children. It wasn't that he was a goody-goody or anything. Yeah. But it was just his state of being.
Oh, well, thank you so much for coming here today and sharing your wisdom, which is just wonderful. So thank you so much. And thank you for listening and watching. And if you do have anything that you have questions to ask, please do let us know. And if you do find that it resonates with you today, or you know someone who might benefit of listening, then please do share. And I'll see you next time. Thank you, Katharine.
Thank you. It's been a great pleasure sharing because those are our fears. And neither are necessary in general.